There is a story that proves that God can transform the greatest betrayal into preparation, the greatest injustice into strategic positioning, and the greatest pain into eternal purpose. The story of a young man who went from spoiled son to sold slave, from forgotten prisoner to ruler of the most powerful empire in the world. His name was Joseph. Today you will discover how 13 years of unjust suffering were actually 13 years of divine preparation. You will understand how God uses family betrayals, false accusations, and unjust imprisonments to position us in the right place at the right time to fulfill extraordinary destinies. If you want to know the greatest story of overcoming and divine purpose in the Bible, like this video right now. Subscribe to the channel to receive more stories that show how God turns tragedies into triumphs. Share it with someone who is experiencing betrayal or injustice. And turn on notifications. This journey through the life of Joseph can revolutionize your understanding of God's plans. My name is Brian, and for the next hour we're going to delve into the Bible's most epic saga of personal transformation. You'll learn how God works through seemingly destructive circumstances, how he uses years of preparation for moments of destiny, and how genuine forgiveness unlocks eternal purpose. Prepare your heart, because the story of Joseph isn't just about an ancient patriarch, it's about how God can take your greatest pain and turn it into your greatest purpose. The hated dreamer. To understand the magnitude of Jose's transformation, we need to start with a spoiled teenager who had grandiose dreams and zero wisdom to share them. Genesis 37:3. And Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. Joseph was clearly Jacob's favorite, and everyone knew it. The tunic of many colors was not just a pretty garment, it was a symbol of authority, indicating that Joseph would be the leader of the family. Imagine the outrage of the older brothers, seeing a 17-year-old being treated as their successor. And when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all their brothers, they hated him, and could not speak peaceably to him. Their hatred was so intense that they could not even have normal conversations with Joseph. Had two dreams that revealed his future dominion over his family, the sheaves of wheat bowing down to him, and the sun, moon, and 11 stars prostrating themselves before him. And he told it to his brothers, and they hated him yet more because of his dreams and his words. Joseph made the youthful mistake of sharing dreams that increased brotherly resentment, and his father rebuked him, and said unto him, What dream is this that thou hast dreamed? Shall I, and thy mother, and thy brethren, come to bow down to thee, to the earth? Even Jacob was troubled by the seeming arrogance of the dreams. Despite his father's favoritism, Joseph worked as a shepherd and brought honest reports about his brother's behavior to his father. He was conscientious, but this only fueled the resentment. I knew a family where the youngest son was clearly favored. He told me, Brian, like Joseph, I was hated by my brothers for something I didn't choose. I've learned that family favoritism can be a blessing in disguise. It prepares you for character-building rejections. Joseph did not realize the danger he posed to his brothers. His honesty and prophetic dreams created a ticking time bomb of jealousy and hatred that would soon explode. Without knowing it, God was using even Jacob's problematic favoritism to prepare Joseph for future leadership positions. Excessive fatherly love was developing trust that would be needed in Egypt. The colorful tunic represented distinction and authority. Ironically, it would be through the loss of this tunic that Joseph would gain royal authority in the future. God gave Joseph prophetic dreams, but he did not give him the wisdom to interpret or share them properly. He was too young to understand the weight of the revelations he was receiving. Jacob's home had become a toxic environment of rivalry, jealousy, and hatred. Joseph was growing up amid family tensions that exploded tragically. Sometimes God gives us visions of the future when we are not yet mature enough to handle them properly. Like Joseph, we can share dreams unwisely and create unnecessary enmity. The same brothers who hated Joseph because of his dreams of dominion would be the very ones who would bow down to him in the future. God has a perfect sense of irony. Betrayal and slavery, what began as brotherly jealousy, turned into one of the most shocking betrayals in biblical history. Genesis 37:13-14. And Israel said unto Joseph, Do not thy brethren feed in Shechem? Come, and I will send thee unto them. Go, I pray thee, see how thy brethren are. Jacob sent Joseph straight into danger. Unknowingly, Joseph readily obeyed his father, unaware of his brother's murderous intentions. It was filial obedience that would lead him straight into a deadly trap. And they said one to another, Behold, the dreamer cometh. Now therefore come, and let us slay him, and cast him into some pit. And we will say, A wild beast hath devoured him. It was cold premeditation of murder. Reuben, the firstborn, tried to save Joseph by suggesting throwing him into a pit without killing him. He secretly planned to rescue him later. He was the only brother with any conscience. And it came to pass, when Joseph was come unto his brethren, that they stripped Joseph of his coat, even the coat of many colors, which he had. And the first thing they did was to tear off the symbol of his special position. And they took him, and cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty. There was no water in it. Joseph was cast into a dry cistern. It was like burying someone alive. And they sat down to eat bread. And they lifted up their eyes, and looked, and, behold, a company of Ishmaelites came from Gilead. They sat down to eat while Joseph cried for help in the pit. Then Judah said, "What profit is there if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites." Judah persuaded the others to sell Joseph into slavery. A businessman told me, "Brian, I was betrayed by my own business partner, who was like a brother to me. Like Joseph, I lost everything overnight. But I understood that sometimes God allows betrayals to reposition us for something greater. And the Midianite merchants passed by, and drew and lifted Joseph out of the pit, and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. 20 pieces of silver, the price of a common slave. The brothers dipped their tunic in goat's blood and showed it to Jacob, saying that a wild beast had devoured Joseph. It was a cruel lie that broke their father's heart. Then he recognized it, and said, 'It is my son's coat. A wild beast has devoured him.' And Jacob arose, and rent his clothes, and mourned for his son many days. Joseph, at age 17, was being taken in chains to Egypt. In a few hours, he went from being a favorite son to a slave to merchants. It was a free fall into the unknown. Jose was completely alone for the first time in his life, without family, without protection, without rights, without any apparent future. It was total isolation in a strange land. Without knowing it, Joseph was beginning the most intense 13 years of preparation in biblical history. Every injustice he would suffer would be training to rule the greatest empire in the world. Genesis 45-8 reveals the divine purpose behind the betrayal. So then, it was not you who sent me here, but God. What appeared to be human wickedness was divine providence. Sometimes the greatest betrayals in our lives are actually divine redirect. God can use human wickedness to position us exactly where he needs us to be. If the story of how God can use betrayal for purpose is touching your heart, leave a like so more people can see this hope. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We have much more on how God turns pain into purpose. Share this with anyone who's been betrayed by loved ones, and turn on notifications. We'll also see how Joseph became the second man in Egypt. Rise and fall in the house of Potiphar in Egypt. Joseph experienced his first great lesson in how God can make someone prosper even in the worst circumstances. Genesis 39-1, and Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him of the hand of the Ishmaelites. Joseph was sold to a high-ranking official in the Egyptian government, and the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man. And he was in the house of his master the Egyptian, and his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that everything he did the Lord made successful in his hand. Even as a slave, Joseph thrived. There was something different about him that even a pagan Egyptian could see. It was God's blessing working through the most adverse circumstances. So Joseph found favor in his sight, and he served him, and he put him in charge of his household, and put all that he had into his hand. In a short time, Joseph went from being a common slave to being a general manager. And it came to pass, from the time that he had made him ruler over his house and over all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake, and the blessing of the Lord was upon all that he had, both in the house and in the field. And he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, so that he knew nothing of what was with him, save the bread which he ate. Potiphar trusted Joseph completely, the complete trust of a master in his slave. And it came to pass after these things, that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and said, "Lie with me." Potiphar's wife tried to seduce Joseph repeatedly, but he refused, and said to his master's wife, "How could I do this? Great wickedness and sin against God." Joseph resisted because he knew it would be a sin against God, not just against Potiphar. And it came to pass, as she spake daily unto Joseph, and he hearkened not unto her, that he came into the house to do his service. And there was none of the men of the house there. An executive told me, "Brian, I was in a similar position. Joseph, my boss, was trying to seduce me and threatening my career if I refused. I remembered Joseph and maintained my integrity. I lost my job, but I gained peace with God and am in a much better position today." When Joseph continued to resist, Potiphar's wife grabbed him by his clothes. Joseph fled, leaving the clothes in her hands, and she then falsely accused him of attempted rape. Then she spoke to him in the same words, saying, "The Hebrew servant whom you brought to us came to me to mock me. And it came to pass, when I lifted up my voice and cried out, that he left his garment beside me and fled. It came to pass, when his master heard the words of his wife, that his wrath was kindled, and his master took Joseph and put him in the prison." Jose went from being a completely trusted administrator to a prisoner accused of a sexual crime. In just a few hours, he lost everything again. It was the second major downfall of his life. Joseph had resisted temptation, maintained moral integrity, been faithful to his master, and he was punished for that very reason. It was an injustice that would test anyone's faith. Without knowing it, Joseph was learning crucial lessons about management, leadership, resisting temptation, and injustice, all necessary for ruling a future empire. Joseph's integrity cost him temporary freedom, but preserved his permanent character. He preferred imprisonment with integrity to freedom with moral compromise. Sometimes doing the right thing costs us everything in the moment, but it preserves our souls for eternal purposes. Joseph's integrity in Potiphar's house qualified him for Pharaoh's trust in the future. The forgotten years in prison. Joseph experienced his longest and most seemingly useless years, but they were essential to his formation as a world leader. Now Joseph was in the prison, but the Lord was with Joseph and showed him kindness and gave him favor in the eyes of the chief jailer. Even in prison, Joseph prospered. This was the third time he had experienced success in adverse circumstances. There was a pattern. Where Joseph was, God was, and where God was, there was prosperity. And the chief jailer committed all the prisoners into Joseph's hand, and everything that was done there he did. Joseph became ruler of the very prison where he was kept. Two of Pharaoh's officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, were imprisoned and had dreams that same night. Joseph interpreted both. The cupbearer would be restored, the baker would be executed. Joseph said to the cupbearer, "But remember me when it is well with you, and I pray thee, show me kindness, and make mention of me to Pharaoh, and bring me out of this house." But the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. For 2 more years Joseph remained, forgotten, imprisoned. It was total abandonment by the one he had helped. Joseph spent 13 years in slavery and prison, from the age of 17 to 30. These were the most productive years of his life wasted in unjust suffering. A pastor told me, "Brian, I spent 10 years in a denomination that rejected and persecuted me. Like Joseph in prison, I felt forgotten by God, but those years prepared me to plant a church that now has thousands of members." No year with God is wasted. During his years of imprisonment, Joseph was learning patience in adversity, leadership in extreme circumstances, interpretation of dreams, complex management, resistance to discouragement. Joseph's gift for dream interpretation developed in prison. He interpreted the dreams of common prisoners before interpreting Pharaoh's dreams. It was progressive preparation. The reckless youth who shared dreams without wisdom had become a mature man who interpreted dreams with wisdom. It was a transformation of character through adversity. 13 years of unjust suffering tested Joseph's faith to the extreme. He could have become bitter, vengeful, unbelieving, but he maintained trust in God even when God seemed absent. God has specific times for our purposes. Joseph could not have ruled Egypt at 17. He needed the maturity that would only come through 13 years of forced preparation. Even the cupbearer's forgetfulness was part of God's plan. If Joseph had been released 2 years earlier, he would not have been available when Pharaoh needed an interpreter of dreams. During the seemingly futile wait, Joseph was being positioned in the right place, at the right time, with the right qualifications, for the most crucial moment in Egyptian history. Our years of apparent futility may actually be our years of most intense preparation. God uses times of forced waiting to prepare us for destinies we cannot even imagine. From prison to the palace after 13 years of preparation, the time has come for Jose to fulfill his extraordinary destiny. Pharaoh had 2 disturbing dreams that no Egyptian sage could interpret. It was then that the cupbearer remembered Joseph and recommended him to Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him up quickly from the den. And he shaved and changed his clothes, and came to Pharaoh. In one morning Joseph went from being a forgotten prisoner to being a royal advisor. Joseph interpreted that there would be 7 years of plenty followed by 7 years of severe famine. He recommended a storage strategy that would save Egypt and neighboring nations. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Because God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be over my house." Joseph was appointed prime minister of Egypt at the age of 30. The Hebrew slave became an imperial governor, second only to Pharaoh himself. It was the most dramatic rise in human history, from dungeons to palaces in a single day. During the famine, Joseph's brothers came to Egypt to get food. Joseph recognized them, but they did not recognize him. After testing them, he revealed his identity in a moving scene of forgiveness and reconciliation. We have reached the end of this extraordinary saga. Joseph proved that God can transform any tragedy into triumph, any injustice into strategic positioning, any betrayal into preparation for eternal purpose. The story of Joseph teaches us that there are no wasted years. In God's school, no injustices wasted in his hands, no betrayals that he cannot turn into blessings. Declare with me, God is using my pain to prepare my purpose. My injustices are strategic positioning. My years of waiting are years of preparation. I am a Joseph in my generation from the valley to the palace. If Joseph's story has awakened your faith that God can transform your greatest pain into your greatest purpose, leave your like now. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more stories that show God's redemptive power. Share with anyone who is experiencing betrayal or injustice. And here's my prophetic challenge. Comment below on this sentence. God is preparing my destiny through my difficulties. I want to see how many of you believe that your current struggles are preparation for future victories. May God bless you, and may the peace of the Eternal be with you.